Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Graham. This is My Business, Your World. Thank you for joining us. Today my guest is Mr. Don Singfield. And Mr. Singfield comes to us from, we're going to go that.
Valley Stream.
I'll edit it. Thank you for joining us. This is Dr. Graham, My Business, Your World. Today our guest is Mr. Don Singfield, who was raised in Southeast Queens and came of age during the bad old days of the 80s and 90s in New York City. Wanting to serve the community in an area of crack and high crime led him to a choice of becoming involved in criminal justice in college. After finding out that law enforcement did not suit his needs to serve, he became a teacher's assistant in New York City public schools. This set him on a lifelong journey to in the helping profession. After becoming a teacher, a school counselor, and a school counseling chairperson, he finally became an adjunct professor. Don finally found his calling doing therapeutic work for individual couples and families in his community. Don also was one of the founding members of the Urban Assembly for Performing Arts in Harlem. His practice he started in 2010, helped to adjust counseling and anger management in Valley Stream, New York. This practice has grown from a 3 to 7 therapist facility with more than 150 patients on a weekly basis. Mr. Singfield, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So let's jump into really quickly. Tell me a little bit about this institution, the Urban Assembly for School in Harlem.
In 2006, a good friend of mine, Fia Davis, became a principal, and she had the opportunity to start a school that was from her own imagination, her own vision of a high school. And she wanted to get performing arts involved in high school and give kids a chance to reach their passion in performing arts without the typical auditioning process, which made it so difficult for many kids to get a chance. And so we started the Urban Assembly School for Performing Arts, which was a unscreened high school which gave kids a chance to do dance, drama, vocal, and instrumental music.
It's interesting that this is actually coming back, and I know there are a number of different times that you hear they're taking away and they're helping. Tell me a little bit about how do you see that helping them in terms of their personal development and growth as they're transitioning?
If you can take a student and give them something that they truly love and integrate that into their education every day, that is something that will foster success in that young person. And that was the idea, that many young people who love performing arts and other things, visual arts or writing, many of them couldn't get into the schools that specialized in that in New York City because they were special programs for which you had to audition or take a test. And we took that process out of it and made it available to all the young people in that community.
What made that click with you? What made that in terms of counseling and seeing that as one area that this would also bring benefit to serving your community?
I had been a counselor for 6 years in Brooklyn in a high school and had worked on a performing arts curriculum through the College Now program. And that showed me that performing arts was something that a lot of kids were passionate about. And so when Fia started the School for Performing Arts, I knew I wanted to be involved in it.
Are you involved in anything, any specialty for you? Do you play? Do you dance?
When I was a teenager, I was a rapper.
Okay.
And so we went as far as we had appearances on college radio, we had a record, we had shows, so maybe that's the connection that I had to the performing arts.
Okay. It helps to fuel passion, and one thing in terms of it's easy that you can use it as a forum. Say music is one of those areas that helps to bridge many gaps in language
Absolutely.
of communication. Tell me a little bit, I wanted to back up a little bit to where we're talking a little bit about the 80s and the 90s. Tell me about that. Tell me what helped to kind of make sure that this is something, what are some of the stories or a story you'd like to share that said to you that, you know what, I need to make a difference in my community and beyond because there are opportunities to help?
I'm glad you asked me that. In high school, I remember there being a push for young people to get involved in the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. It was a time, I'm 45 years old. I graduated high school in 1987. And during that time, there was a lot of drugs inundating the communities. And those drugs caused a kind of a culture of toughness in the communities because the people, you were aware that there were addicts and that there were people who were doing this drug dealing in the community. So I thought that during that time there being such a push to stop the drugs and the anti-drug movement that I would be in the criminal justice system. But I realized quickly that I didn't want to be a person that was arresting or prosecuting or on the side of law enforcement, although it's a necessary function. And I realized that the helping professions was where I belonged, and I became a teacher assistant where I was told almost immediately that I had a good effect on the students, that I had a calming kind of presence, and people told me that, you should really think about counseling. Started getting mentored by the school counselor there, later became a teacher, then a guidance counselor, then specializing in therapeutic work, specifically anger management, family and couples counseling.
All right, so we'll get into all that because that's fun, and I think that's a conversation that we can talk about on at least 2 weeks back to back. The nature of the impact, we underestimate what the impact is in our day-to-day and our professional lives. But it is such a necessity for to have the counseling aspect of it. The other components, the legal and the enforcement, is so challenging, and it's something you have to be cut out for it. I have individuals who I know they want to train in one of what it is. They go into the counseling part of it because they don't have what it takes to go through and see it. It's really a total different picture. So it's for the people who are in it and are doing an amazing job. It's wonderful. We're now going back to a period where here on Long Island, I think actually Channel 12 is doing a piece on heroin because it's been so rampant. Now, we're not going to talk about the drugs component for very long, but it is something that is very important. It's very critical because it also plays into why they're doing it. The anger, the stress management, and so on, and all the pieces that are not there that we're not seeing, and we're challenging or pushing individuals to a route that's not necessarily the best and also very challenging to get out of, right?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about anger.
Okay.
What is anger?
Anger is an emotion that is really healthy and important as a part of our identity. So in the sense that when you are in your daily life and someone does something that truly violates you or your rights or is a challenge to your own identity in some way, then in those cases, it's appropriate for you to become angry. And, the appropriateness and the importance of anger there is that if we didn't become angry, perhaps we wouldn't have the ability to be a person that is an advocate for self, etc. But then there is another aspect of anger that deals with our own shame or sometimes lack of a strong identity. and that is if you have situations that happen to you that take you back to a place in your development where there may be a weak link, sometimes you find yourself reacting and overreacting to things that are simply part of life and not someone violating you or trying to take away your rights. And so in that way, well, that's what anger is, and in that way there's a distinction between anger as something that we have to guard against and anger as something that's just real.
Well, just now it just happened. As you could see, we're talking about anger, and there it is. You know, unnecessary, sometimes distractions, so on and so forth. And then you have to kind of rein it in. And I guess it's probably perfect that it happened because everybody just got an opportunity to probably see me turn purple or pink or green. But it's interesting that when we talk about anger, we talk about it being healthy. It obviously is a part of emotions, and you have to understand what triggered and what are all those causes, so that then you can identify what needs to be done, and then you can take it, because there's two different areas, two different aspects to anger. So let's talk about the anger that I guess a little bit about a slacker versus a tyrant boss.
Okay. Well, a tyrant boss, within all of us, there's this part of the brain called the amygdala, right? So the amygdala fires off danger signals when something happens that we need to be aware of. So if we go back, to when we were in a hunter-gatherer society, if you had to fight off intruders from your village, the amygdala would be what would go off in the event that you had a situation like that. But then in the workplace, there's a lot of smaller things that happen to us all the time. We have a deadline that's coming up, right? So that tyrant boss, if this person, let's say if his personality profile is overachiever, hard-driving person who must accomplish things, sometimes what comes with that is that there's not as much social skill with that person. So that person may be this hard-driving accomplisher who, when his amygdala fires off those signals, all he knows is that he has to get this thing done. And so the people that work under tyrant boss's leadership may experience his anxiety. And with anger, you know, a stressful event is usually what leads to anger. It's a stressful event which leads to a series of thoughts, which then leads to the emotion, right? So this tyrant boss might be a person that the thoughts that go through his mind might be, I have to raise my voice in order to be heard, which might be something that goes back to his own development. But when we're in the workplace, we don't really care about what somebody has experienced in their past. And we kind of, if we're the workers who work under this tyrant boss, we could be feeling like our rights are being violated because this person is raising his voice, or this person makes unreasonable demands, etc.
All right, so here goes. I'm sorry. Talking about the tyrant boss. I have a financial background, and I know deadlines. And it is so critical for you, and different behaviors and personality come about where you have to be more assertive. I know that my tone, unless I speak very softly and very low, when elevated a little bit, comes across very stern and very sarcastic. But what it means is there's no idler dilly-dally. And until tyrant boss, typically, I guess it's not necessarily, yes, I will agree with you to an extent, obviously you're the expert here, that something in the background triggers that. But if you're not able to be firm, you're not going to get the result. And you're not going to have jobs, or you're not going to have those opportunities. Deadlines are deadlines.
Yep.
And then you have employees, which I find a lot of. I run a personal development program, and when you do a couple of the inquiries, they have a sense, or individuals think they have a sense of entitlement to everything. And it's a free fall, and it's a fun, effective environment. So there is, I think, a couple of different things that happen when we have to look at it. And I guess this is where when we're coming up on, I guess, on our first break, talk about the slacker employee a little bit and why they are not as productive in terms of some of the behaviors that they portray.
So a person who is a slacker, as you said, for whatever reason, this person may feel that they don't have to, or that they simply don't want to. There may be a sense of not enjoying working very hard. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of them working hard is causing them distress, and they look for every reason maybe not to do what is required of them. And that is something that you're absolutely right, would have to be addressed. If there's a deadline and this person has to do something, it would have to be addressed. The rule of communication regarding stressful situations is to say what it is that you need. So you are asking for what you need in clear language. And often, the repetition of asking for what you need is required, because when you say to a person who is maybe self-motivated, we need this to be done by tomorrow, close of business, that person may walk away and do it, and you won't have a second thought about it. But someone who is a slacker, this person might believe that if they're not asked about it again, or if a reminder didn't come through, that they would be able to try to avoid doing the work in some way. And I mean, ultimately in the workplace, it's not acceptable. But the belief that you have to, let's say, raise your voice at someone or berate other people, that is a choice. And those choices can be something that can lower morale in the workplace eventually, because that usually is a habit of a specific person, the tyrant boss, versus something that they do only in very specific situations.
All right, I have a whole bunch of different things. I'm thinking of scenarios and so on, and I know we put in place policies and procedures to address those, and you know how to communicate properly and effectively. But why is it that when it is that something needs to be done, that certain behavior, it doesn't mean that it's negative or it's making morale low, that it has to be. You have teams or a group, it's one or two individuals carrying the weight. And I know we will talk about a little bit about it's kind of like picking the wrong job. You know, the individuals are in position that they hate, and then they're going to be slackers, they're going to be angry, and so on, passive-aggressive behavior. Yeah. So let's come back. I think we're on our next break, so we'll just go to commercial. Thank you for joining us. Again, this is My Business, Your World. I'm Dr. Graham. We're a management consulting firm that helps businesses to become more profitable by looking at their operations in over 25 areas of their business.
Thank you, Dr. Graham.
My name is Dr. Robert Brevard. I'm here for Multi-Medicine in Westbury, New York. We're located at 1065 Old Country Road, Suite 214. Been here for about 15 years. The practice has medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. We also do pain management, and we have orthopedists on staff. Here at Advanced Multi-Medicine Rehabilitation, we've got physical therapists on staff who treat an array of conditions, from neck pain to back pain, shoulder pain. We treat carpal tunnel. We treat a lot of car accident patients, slip and falls. We treat patients with knee injuries, with ankle injuries. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We've been here for over 15 years. Vast array of diagnostic testing, from x-rays to EMGs. What is an EMG? It's a diagnostic test that allows a doctor to determine where the pinched nerve is. Cora is a physical therapist at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's working on Stephanie, who was involved recently in an automobile accident. Stephanie has tight thoracic and cervical musculature, and Cora is doing some myofascial release work and some therapeutic stretching, doing it to help her with her pain. Vicky is also a patient here at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. Vicky is now working her leg muscles, specifically her quadricep muscles, trying to strengthen them after an injury she sustained. If you find yourself in need of any type of physical therapy, please don't hesitate to call Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation, located in Westbury, New York, in Suite 214. Phone number is 516-334-7000, or find us on our website at advancedmultimedicine.com.
Thanks for joining us again. This is Dr. Graham, My Business, Your World. I'm with my guest, Mr. Don Singfield. Don,
Yes.
thank you again for joining us. We're chatting a little bit about, I guess, going into passive aggressive, and why is it that when it takes a certain type of behavior to get, I don't want to go into the religious component of that, but you have to be firm and assertive. And it doesn't mean that it's negative. But oftentimes, as a senior manager, as a manager of a department, or of an organization, of a team, you find a lot of individuals don't carry their weight or don't want to do what it is. Oftentimes, we're in professions that we're not passionate about, but it pays the bills. Mm-hmm. I always encourage and tell to individual, irregardless of what it is, that's what it is you're earning, your keep. That is what you've committed to that company to do. So it is your job and your responsibility to perform at your best. Any other nuances, anything that is outside of the norm of their policies and procedures, you talk with your HR individual, or if it's not good for you, move on. Obviously, it's not the same mindset when you're talking about small businesses and small business owners, and if it's just one with 2 employees versus 2 business owner, and so on and so forth. So whichever area you want to pick, if you want to jump into passive aggressive or talk a little bit about the slacker employee, or talk about those employees that are picking jobs or unhappy in their profession or hate what it is that they do.
Okay, I'll try to touch on aspects of all of those. Well, one thing I would say is that the 2 words that you use, firm and assertive, are key words, because those are the characteristics of communication that you want to be firm and assertive. I remember years ago working with a supervisor who would be quick to use words like, these people are incompetent, or she would say, so unprofessional, and she may say it out loud, but not directed at any particular person. And those kinds of behaviors from a supervisor would not be considered being firm or assertive. It would be maybe more towards behavior that would get passive-aggressive responses, because maybe to say something like so unprofessional in front of a group of employees, and maybe 2 people are not sure who exactly she's talking to, or what exactly she's talking about, that itself could be considered passive-aggressive, and you might get some responses back that people are not as motivated to do what they could or should do. And I think that you're certainly correct that there are people who are just not happy to be doing what they're doing, and if they had the opportunity to walk out the door and do something else, they would. And that's one of the things about being in this economy where people don't have options. Sometimes they feel stuck at a job, and they are doing the bare minimum because they don't love what they do. And that's unfortunate because people at the workplace will then have to deal with, the fellow employees have to deal with that lack of motivation, and the supervision there has to deal with that lack
Plus,
of
the
motivation.
right person who needs that job is out there waiting for that job.
Absolutely.
And an individual in that position, in my mind, and a judge not less to be judged, I don't want to be judged, is if I can feel that way about this, even if something about that I'm passionate, I think I'm still going to be the same. I'm not going to take that because, oh, this is my ideal job. Anything that you want, you have to work very hard at it. And if it's not a situation that you want to be in, you have to work hard to get out of it. So you must be committed to whatever it is and do your due diligence of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at and talk about a little bit about a passive-aggressive person.
Mm-hmm. Passive-aggressive behavior can manifest, in any kind of situation, a family life, professional life. So being passive aggressive is usually doing something that is a behavior that obviously shows some kind of resistance or opposition or even anger, but you're doing or not doing something that cannot be pinpointed by the person or people who you're affecting. It's something that can be denied. Like, for instance, if you come to a meeting and the decision at this meeting is totally against what you believe, we are going to, we're going to start doing staff development 3 times a month, and it will be in the morning now versus in the afternoon, and in fact, it's going to be at 8 a.m. at the top of the day because we think that this is the best way to promote morale. And maybe you're not a morning person and this is your worst nightmare to, have to show up at 8 a.m. for a staff development meeting. Well, if you are part of, like you said, a small team, let's say, 4 people who are supposed to be meeting, dealing with, staff development for your small team, and you're a very integral part of that team, but you show up to this 40-minute meeting 25 minutes in, and, you say that you just happen to miss the train, but this happens time and time again. Well, if you keep saying that you missed the train, but other people are suspecting that it's really because you hate the idea of coming to an early meeting, that possibly could be passive-aggressive behavior. And passive-aggressive behavior is particularly a potent and poisonous way of dealing with situations that you need to be assertive about, or that you may even need to accept sometimes, because the people involved can't even have a dialogue with you because you are essentially doing something underhanded. You're not saying, I have a particular resistance to this time of this meeting or whatever it is. You are simply doing something that undermines the functioning of what's happening, and no one can discuss it with you because you're saying that you just missed the train.
And it's very challenging when individuals do not understand. And I think a lot of times when I train or a mini program or workshop that I'm doing is put yourself in the seat, if you can, or the position of the owner, the senior executive, or whomever it is. You think because they make $10,000 or $20,000 or $10 or $100 more than you, you do not understand the amount of responsibility that comes with that, and you do not understand where that is. Time is very important. Things happen. So if you're not the right fit, you shouldn't be in that position. You should not be holding space. And oftentimes it's 2 or 1 individual for a project that's always pulling the weight. So it shows. And a lot of companies tend to now, because in this we had a little trying time where we've gotten there and getting out of it, and there are plenty of business opportunities. You just have to look to see where those are and where you need to go. But you need to be able to move on out and let someone else come in that can do the job, because it's not fair for one or two persons to be pulling that weight. They're not being paid, and if anything, their morale is the one that's affected, and they should be the one that's angry. And they typically are, but they still have that passion and a drive to do certain things, and they know they're hard workers and will do what they need. They're not necessarily going to do, you do have some, I guess, that will do other, be a little bit extreme. Let's talk a little bit about the angry small business or business owner, business manager. Let's talk a little bit about that relationship, and then we can probably chat about, because we also have to look at the health complication that happens in terms of anger and stress management.
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to agree with you. It's absolutely true that the people who are working hard at any company are very much affected by the slackers, because they end up working harder, and often you have one person who's carrying the weight of a group. And you know, it's kind of feels nice sometimes to be that person who is doing a lot for the company, and you know, people are throwing their arm around you saying, if it weren't for you, you know, this wouldn't be happening. At the same time, the stress that it can put on an individual can be overwhelming. Sorry, you were saying that what you wanted me to get into now was...
Talk a little bit about the angry business owner, or two partner company, or so on and so forth. Let's talk a little bit about that, because it's something that we don't take into consideration, and at the end of the day, everything affects your bottom line. If you're trying to make money, you got to learn how to do this so that you can go out and make that money. Your personality changes. So if you're an angry person, I don't want to build a relationship or do business with you. Whatever, if I'm not going to give you a contract and I don't want to come in. So let's talk a little bit about.
Yeah. Well, the small business owner, the word that you use, relationships, that is what it is all about. You have to be able to talk to people in the community, talk to other businesses that are like yours, that could help you in some cases. And if you are angry, often what it will cause is a lack of desire to talk to people, because often people who are angry don't really believe that people will listen to them or respect them. And there's a lot that you can do working independently, but at some point you're going to need allies. And so, you know, the relationships that you need to build is very important to be a communicator, to be a collaborator, and certainly the people that work for you when you have a small business. If you have a one or two or three person business, you know, these individuals, the feelings of these people become very important, because if they feel ignored by you, disrespected by you, it's going to be hard for them to have the appropriate emotions to do the work that's necessary. And while that sounds maybe irrational in one way, if you're working for, you know, Geico or some international corporation, your work may not seem as connected to your boss as when you're working for a small company, and you know that if these invoices don't go out by the 29th of that month, that, you know, payments will be pushed back 15 more days, and that that could affect your boss's bottom line in a very real way. If you're aware of that, but you feel demoralized by this person, I mean, there can actually be sabotage that happens within a small business in that way. So I would say that the social, emotional component of the workplace becomes more important when you're the owner or boss in a small business.
Yeah. I think we're up on our next break. So again, this is Dr. Graham on My Business, Your World with my host, Don Sinkfield. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
My name is Dr. Robert Brevard. I'm here for Multi-Medicine in Westbury, New York. We're located at 1065 Old Country Road, Suite 214. Been here for about 15 years. The practice has medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. We also do pain management, and we have orthopedists on staff. Here at Advanced Multi-Medicine Rehabilitation, we've got physical therapists on staff who treat an array of conditions, from neck pain to back pain, shoulder pain. We treat carpal tunnel. We treat a lot of car accident patients, slip and falls. We treat patients with knee injuries, with ankle injuries. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We've been here for over 15 years. Vast array of diagnostic testing, from x-rays to EMGs. What is an EMG? It's a diagnostic test that allows a doctor to determine where the pinched nerve is. Cora is a physical therapist at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's working on Stephanie, who was involved recently in an automobile accident. Stephanie has tight thoracic and cervical musculature, and Cora is doing some myofascial release work and some therapeutic stretching, doing it to help her with her pain. Vicky is also a patient here at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. Vicky is now working her leg muscles, specifically her quadricep muscles, trying to strengthen them after an injury she sustained. If you find yourself in need of any type of physical therapy, please don't hesitate to call Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation, located in Westbury, New York, in Suite 214. Phone number is 516-334-7000, or find us on our website at advancedmultimedicine.com.
I haven't gone there. Thank you for joining us again. I'm Dr. Graham with my guest, Don Sinkfield, and we were chatting about, just wrapping up about employee possibly sabotage, which is absolutely accurate. When they don't meet the deadlines, they know that they can do X, Y, and Z. And the sabotage is really just to themselves and their fellow coworkers. You're only going to put the business in a position where it's not. And it's not just small business. You have that in large institutions as well. And I know oftentimes when employees resign from a lot of these organizations, they're just walked out. They don't get, even though they give a 2 weeks notice and so on and so forth. Continuing along that line, let's talk about how does an HR person, or how should an HR team address these issues, because it's there, it's in day in, day out. There's never one day where someone's not getting angry or stressed out. You have to make collections call, and that's often perfect. You've made $100,000, $50,000, $1 million, whatever the dollar amount is, and you have to call the clients. And some of the clients keep giving you the runaround. You have pressure because cash flow needs to be reined in. And you have collectibles that are beyond the days that they need to be. It's very, very frustrating situation to be in. And I know even from a month-end perspective, wanting to get all the pieces that you need to close the books for that particular month or for a particular group, it provides a number of different challenges. And you come up against whichever department it is that you have to work with. Stress versus anger. Stress equaling anger. I learned in school, stress is a dessert spelled back way. So there you go. Think something sweet, and it should kind of bring you, calm you down somewhat.
Yeah. Well, you know, people who work for any kind of company, like you said, where there's possible sabotage happening, I agree that the people who are the employees usually end up suffering at the hands of their fellow employees, and that can be something that HR can deal with in the following way. I mean, you as an HR person, if you see someone having a problem managing stress, it can start as possibly a conversation. And in my line of work, because I am a therapist and I do EAP counseling, which is employee assistance program counseling, often HR people call and ask for maybe 3 sessions or 6 sessions for an employee that they think is having an anger problem at work, an employee who's having too many interpersonal disagreements with their fellow workers, sometimes marital problems, relationship,
Correct.
family issues can creep into how a person feels on a regular basis, and then at work they are, for lack of a better term, acting out.
They're struggling with both what's there they're bringing in
Absolutely.
to work and vice versa.
Yeah, because sometimes it's very hard for people to separate what's happening outside of work from work. So, it's necessary for that to be an ongoing conversation and to have HR people who are not simply punitive, but willing to be frank with people about what's happening, because that in the workplace, there really isn't a lot of room for hostility or anger to stop daily functioning from happening.
It's quite challenging, and instead of doing a workshop or doing the individual counseling, a good opportunity is to also have those workshops in for
Yes.
everyone, because different people are dealing with it. And one of the things that I find is the more I know about something that either I'm against or something that I'm not familiar with, I begin to now understand what the role is for that individual. So therefore I can act accordingly or how to get the best result. So that is it's also very important, because then as a group collectively you can see what it is that you're doing and what's your greater good and overall benefit. But most HR individuals are probably, before we go into that, they're probably not trained or equipped to maybe identify some of these issues.
That's true.
There is huge compliance reliability when you're starting to deal with these other issues that come in, because most people don't understand, and I say it, your personal life should be just as your professional life. You create your balance right there. It's not going to say you're not unique, and you're not going to have your hissy fits or be angry or so on and so forth. But once you see the parallel between both, it makes sense, and it's easier for you to balance it. Obviously, it's not as easy as it sounds, but you will make and take the steps to do that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, what kind of programs are they doing it? Are you doing programs that are workshops that facilitate the entire company at 2 to 3 workshops? And what are some of the results?
Well, specifically, there's a union in New York that I work with, and I often go in and I talk to the delegates
Right.
about anger at the workplace. We talk about what kind of services can be offered for very specific behaviors, sometimes alcohol abuse. All of these things rear their heads at the workplace. So I often, with this specific union, I have those talks with management and the delegates, because the union delegates might be people who are kind of advocates for the employees and can see sometimes when people need a little help, and
Right.
it's better for it to come from your colleague who is a union delegate more so than it is from management, who might have to document the fact that you're having this adjustment problem at work. And so most of the times, the workshops that we do have to do with passive-aggressive behavior and anger in the workplace, the results of alcohol and substance abuse in the workplace, and they often have very good results in that people then start to, it creates a culture at the company where people start to be a little bit more open when they see that the stigma is taken away from coming to see someone about whatever it is that they're dealing with.
All right, let's chat. My thoughts are all over the place. The union was a really good example because oftentimes we don't think their high demands in negotiation in those are heightened. It doesn't matter what it is. It's always ruling in favor of the employees, not understanding really the very significant impact that this have, not just on that organization, but the overall economy. And the larger the organization is, the more that impact is felt or they come under scrutiny. Let's talk about your business a little bit, and just based on that, growing from 3 to 7 and having at least 150 clients per week. What made you grow from 2010 to today? What are you doing, and what are some of the challenges or changes that you're seeing that are allowing for that kind of growth in your business?
When I started off, I actually started off with just me, listing myself on Psychology Today as a therapist in the Queens, Long Island area, and the phone calls started to come in, and as it grew over the first year, because people then meet you and tell someone else about you and tell another person, and then more people look you up on the internet, and then we used Google, or I used Google to make a Google business place, and then more and more people started to see. Eventually, it goes from where you are charging people for services to then realizing that you have to be involved with the insurance companies because there's so many working people who need the services that if these working people have great insurance, they are not going to pay out of pocket for services sometimes that they could get through their insurance. So I think the main things that made me grow was that I realized the need to get involved with the insurance carriers so that people could use their policies for my services, and then the presence on the internet, getting a professional website, adding more and more things on the internet that people would see us, we'd be exposed to the public. We started www.valleystreamtherapist.com, get plenty of hits where people send an email through the website or we get a phone call, and basically that word of mouth and internet presence are the main two things that made us grow, and getting the right people on my team I think was also very important. I think that over these past 4 years we kind of grew organically. I didn't rush the process. As I met and felt good about people who I did meet, I would integrate their team, I would integrate their skills and their presence onto the team, and then our skill set and our team grew. We brought more and more people in, people brought their own ideas in, and so those are some of the things that caused the growth.
Synergy is very important, and obviously you're taking advantage of the internet and anything that is tech, being a little bit more tech savvy, using those free resources to make sure that you're accessible.
Yes.
If they don't see you, they don't know that you're there.
Right.
You're taking the additional step to realize that some of this is things that are covered. At one point, insurance companies covered very minimal these requests or needs for individuals. Now we're on a big spurge of this health and wellness. This is a significant portion of GDP, and it will continue to be in terms of its growth as a business. So those are important, and having the right people on your team.
Yes.
You can't grow, and I like the fact that you share that it was a slow process. Most of us want to grow, and we don't understand that. You have to go through the teething stages for you to get to where it is that you need to. Anything that's going to expand pretty significantly, it's going to explode. And then here we're going to go in stress management, anger
Right.
issues, suicide, health complications, and so on. We're coming up on our next break and probably our final break. So let's touch a little bit. I think we started talking about the individuals and group therapy. I think we talked about passive aggressive and a little bit about stress versus anger. I don't think we quite went into that. So take a minute and maybe see if you could just chat about the difference between stress and anger.
Yeah, well, I think stress is usually a precursor to anger, because we all experience some form of stress. I mean, whether it's interpersonal stress or just the too much being on your plate at one time, or unpredictable events in life, these things are stressful. So when I talked about the amygdala, that part of the brain that says there's something happening, that, there's something I need to be watchful about, or that's the stress. And the stress leads to the fight or flight reaction that is part of us as human beings. And that fight or flight reaction is something that we can control, because we have the choice to fight or flee, or to go into what's called our advanced, or not the primitive brain, but our more advanced brain, where we're able to think on a higher level and realize that sometimes collaboration or withdrawing from the situation or other tactics might be necessary.
Yeah, I often say if you're angry and you want, take a few, come back. I'm asking the question. I'm always
right.
notorious, what's wrong, because I know something is wrong. But if you don't want to talk about it, just tell me you don't want to talk about it now. We'll pick up at another time.
Exactly.
And before I do anything, I know that I'm heated. I'll compile my email or whatever I'm writing, have it sit,
Yes.
then go back, read it 2-3 times before I even send it out. It's important to get to that. Again, thank you for joining us. We're going to go to our break. This is My Business, Your World with my guest, Mr. Don Sinkfield. Our number is 631-481-9124, or you can send us an email at info@grahamconsultingandresearch.com.
My name is Dr. Robert Brevard. I'm here for Multi-Medicine in Westbury, New York. We're located at 1065 Old Country Road, Suite 214. Been here for about 15 years. The practice has medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. We also do pain management, and we have orthopedists on staff. Here at Advanced Multi-Medicine Rehabilitation, we've got physical therapists on staff who treat an array of conditions, from neck pain to back pain, shoulder pain. We treat carpal tunnel. We treat a lot of car accident patients, slip and falls. We treat patients with knee injuries, with ankle injuries. We have state-of-the-art equipment. We've been here for over 15 years. Vast array of diagnostic testing, from x-rays to EMGs. What is an EMG? It's a diagnostic test that allows a doctor to determine where the pinched nerve is. Cora is a physical therapist at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. She's working on Stephanie, who was involved recently in an automobile accident. Stephanie has tight thoracic and cervical musculature, and Cora is doing some myofascial release work and some therapeutic stretching, doing it to help her with her pain. Vicky is also a patient here at Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation. Vicky is now working her leg muscles, specifically her quadricep muscles, trying to strengthen them after an injury she sustained. If you find yourself in need of any type of physical therapy, please don't hesitate to call Advanced Multi-Medicine and Rehabilitation, located in Westbury, New York, in Suite 214. Phone number is 516-334-7000, or find us on our website at advancedmultimedicine.com.
You need to let me know when I'm in screen. Hi, thanks for joining us again. This is My Business Your World, Dr. Graham, with my guest, Ms. Dawn Sinkfield. Our number is 631-481-9124. You can send us an email at info@Graham Consulting and Research. Thank you again for being on our program. It was really enjoyable chatting with you. Now let's try and talk. We don't have much time left before we wrap up. Let's touch on a couple of things. Busting your chops, I do that a lot, mostly with family and friends. And look about flirting or romantic affairs in the office or work environment. Let's chat about those for a little bit.
Okay. Bullying at work is usually the result of insecurity on the part of the bully. So if the person, let's just make a scenario. If the person who is a bully was at the workplace for 10 years, this person was a pharmacist before the new pharmacist came in. And this person has a lower level of education because the rules, let's say, changed, and now you have to be a doctor of pharmacy, but this person doesn't have the doctorate degree, and these new people that come in have the doctorate degree. This person may, let's say, try to shift the workload onto the new pharmacist and may try to disparage the education that they have versus the experience that they have because of their own insecurities. This often happens at work, and this person is really a cancer to the workplace unless they are managed. It's very important to have supervision in place to manage people who bully others, because it can be very subtle with, as I said, shifting workload or demoralizing other colleagues. It's really a very destructive atmosphere when there's a bully in the workplace.
And you can have it the reverse, because sometimes you have individuals coming in just because they're older. The younger ones do have the more experience and can do, and so on and so forth. I know we're going to probably run through this section really quickly because there's so many things to talk about. Let's talk about really quickly, probably 30 seconds or so, about romantic affair. I really want to touch on the financial component of stress, because I know that always happens, and then does that, what it means, when you become angry. And so let's talk a little bit about the flirting or the office romance.
Yeah, well, office romances, it can be okay if there's a time limit to it. Like, for instance, people who start a relationship at work that in the next 6 months one person is leaving to be transferred or something to another location, those are usually the ones that work out. But usually when two people are at work and there's a relationship and it goes for a long period of time, there usually is some issues associated with that, because, as we know, relationships have ups and downs, and people usually have a very hard time separating their emotions from the functioning of the workplace. And so you can see the energy of these two people who are not happy with each other in the meeting, interacting with each other, or having to do some kind of project together, and it's a very stony silence or something like that, and then that affects other people in the way that colleagues may start gossiping, causing compounded distraction. So it's usually not a good thing, and ends up at HR if it goes really out of hand.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. While there are good things that happen out of it, but I think we're can't believe we're at the end. We didn't really get to go into the financial component and the health complication. We know about heart disease, and not just heart disease. There are other implications, other things that happens even for suicide, and also with people who get to that level that they've not resolved those issues. Again, Don, thanks for joining us, and hopefully in the future we'll probably get a chance to chat and maybe chat about some of the things we didn't get to cover here.
I would love
Again,
to.
This is My Business, Your World. I'm Dr. Graham with my guest, Mr. Don Sinkfield. Our number is 631-481-9124. You can send an email at info@grahamconsultingandresearch.com. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.